A woman named Hannah is 75 years old. She has lived in the same apartment building in Kyiv her whole life. This morning, her neighbor walked into a street and opened fire on everyone around him. She told reporters he seemed like an educated, refined man. You never guess he was some kind of a criminal. He didn't socialize much, just a greeting and he'd be on his way. He lived alone. 6 people are dead, 14 wounded, and a man who did it, Ukrainian authorities say, was born in Russia. On the other side of the world, a pope is traveling across Africa with a message no one in power wants to hear. Both stories matter tonight. Stay tuned for the rest. Subscribe, like, comment, and share if you're new here. Now, a mass shooting on a crowded street in wartime Kyiv. What happened, how it ended, and why Ukraine's security service is calling it terrorism. Then the Pope Leo is on an 11-day tour to Africa, or Africa continent, obviously, because it's not a country. Now, Trump attacked him on social media. JD Vance told him to be careful. Now, this happened this morning, April 18th, Kyiv, Ukraine. It happened in the Holosivsky district, a busy residential and commercial area in the heart of the capital. A 58-year-old man with legally registered automatic weapon walked out into the street and opened fire on civilians. 6 people were killed on the street, 14 were wounded and taken to the hospital. The gunman has barricaded himself inside a nearby supermarket, taking hostages for 40 minutes. A female police officer negotiating in full body armor stood behind an armed vehicle with a loudspeaker, tried to reach him. She said, "The people are not the blame for this. Please let them go and we will talk with you." He did not come out. Special Tactical Forces police units stormed the building. The gunman opened fire on officers during the assault. He was shot and killed. Ukraine Security Service, the SBU, declared the attack as an act of terrorism. Now you might be wondering why. Now, the President Zelensky confirmed publicly that the attacker was born in Russia. No motive has been established. Investigations are still placing together why this has happened. Now, reporters from Associated Press were on the scene, and they said they described the bodies on the crowded city street covered with emergency blankets before being taken away. Bystanders who had been shopping and walking around to work gone. Now, here's what the context that makes the story heavier than it already is. Ukraine has been under full-scale Russian invasion since February 2022. More than 1,500 Ukrainian civilians have been killed in Russia drone and missile strikes since the invasion began. Now, just 2 days ago, on 16th of April, Russia launched nearly 700 drones and dozens of ballistic missiles at Kyiv, Odessa, and Dnipro, killing at least 16 people, including a 12-year-old child, and wounding more than 100 others in one of the biggest rages, you can say, in weeks. A 54-year-old Kyiv resident named Tatiana Skol sheltered in her family with her dog as the window shattered around her at the blast wave. A city already living under a constant threat of missiles from the sky woke up today to gunfires in its own street. Now, Ukraine's foreign minister said after the Russian drone attack 2 days ago, such attacks cannot be normalized. These are war crimes. They must be stopped, and they keep coming in every form. Now, go to Africa, the continent, where the Pope is saying things out loud the world leaders have been too afraid to say. He is the first American-born Pope in history and is currently on an 11-day tour in the continent of Africa, particularly countries like Algeria, Cameroon, Angola, and more to come. Now, this trip was planned months ago. It was meant to be about peace, about dignity of the African continent, about speaking directly to communities that the global church too often overlooks. And then Donald Trump got involved, per usual. Before the Pope even landed in Algeria on the 13th of April, Trump posted in his media calling him weak on crime and soft on foreign policy. He suggested the Pope should stick to religion and stay out of politics, he shared, and then deleted an AI-generated image of himself as Jesus Christ. Guys, this country I can't make this up, okay? I didn't want to save that image on my phone, so I didn't save it. Then JD Vance, a Catholic convert, told the Pope publicly to be careful when speaking about theology. The Pope's response was measured, firm, and delivered from the air. Flying to Algeria, he told reporters, "I have no fear of Trump administration and I will not stop speaking the message of the gospel." Then on April 16th, the Pope traveled to Bemida, a city in western Cameroon, at the center of a separatist conflict that has been raging for nearly a decade. More than 6,000 people killed, more than 600,000 displaced, one of the most neglected crises on the African continent. Now, separatist fighters in the region announced a 3-day pause in their conflict specifically to allow the Pope safe passage. Standing in St. Joseph Cathedral before thousands of people, with Mancun traditional chief, a Presbyterian leader, an imam, a Catholic nun, all seated together, Pope Leo said this: "The world is being ravaged by hands of tyrants. Ravaged by hands of tyrants. Woe to those who manipulate religion and the name of God for their own military, economic, and political gain, dragging that which is sacred into darkness and filth. The masters of war pretend not to know that it only takes a moment to destroy, yet often a lifetime is not enough to rebuild." He did not name Trump. He did not have to. Today, on the papal plane flying from Cameroon to Angola, the Pope told journalists those speeches were written 2 weeks before Trump ever commented on him. He said he has no interest in debating the president. He said most of which has been written has been more commentary on commentary. A Cameroonian diplomat told Reuters, "Nowhere in modern history have we witnessed such a verbal recklessness against an institution as reversed as the papacy." Popecy. They should call it papacy, not papacy. And in a crowd in Bemenda, a woman named Jim Confidence Masha, a cloth maker whose shop was destroyed in separatist conflict, stood and watched a pope come to the city the world forgot. Now here's what the street is saying. Kyiv in the morning, a city already being bombed from the sky. 6 people dead on a crowded street because one man with a legal weapon decided their lives were expendable. Sounding very familiar to like America. In Cameroon, Pope stood in conflict zone that the world has largely forgotten for 9 years and more. Trump called that weak. Now, if you found this episode today, subscribe. We cover global stories that get buried under headlines that everyone is running from multiple times a week as best as we can. Human first, always sourced. Share this with someone who did not know what happened in Kyiv today. Share it with someone who needs to hear what the Pope said in Bemenda. Drop a comment. Tell me what stayed with you. I leave you all in the care of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Fi amanillah.